So there is this really neat trick that you can do with Roblox's viewport frames, and it's the fact that you can kind of add a masking layer to them, and if you don't know what it means then don't worry, I will be explaining that later, but for now remember to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, and let's get into the video. And the first thing I need to talk about is the Devforum post right here. So shout out to this guy for actually experimenting and coming up with this stuff, but he basically just explains the whole process, that like I said I'm also gonna do later on, and to briefly just explain this part right now, so you at least have an idea of what's going on. This paragraph says that the meshes with erased vertex alpha, which was shown right here, render nothing behind them, and in that sense are essentially a mask for viewport frames. And then here you can see that there is a diagram. So you have the camera, this whole part which is a mesh, with a text cutout, and then another viewport frame which has this cube. So now the area that's covered on this layer, which is all black, is not going to be rendered, and what's going to be seen is only going to be this text area. And then here is the result that it gives. But after that there are a few examples right here on the bottom, which I'm gonna go over in this video. So here is the file that you can download, and this is gonna include all of these examples from right here. So normally you would just press on it, then just save it somewhere, and then open it in Studio, which I'm gonna show in a second. But there is also a summary down here at the end. And this note that I wanted to mention, which is saying that this is not an intended feature, and it might be fixed in a future Roblox update. But now for the Studio part. So to open the file you just go into File, and then select Open from File right here. And then after that you just select the file and it should open this place. So you just have the happy home and some cubes. So let's just do a playtest. And also I know that some people are going to say this, but I saw the idea from ByteBlocks, so go check out his video if you haven't already, the link is gonna be in the description. But you can basically see that right now we have some UI, and also this, well, ghost house. And right off the bat you can see that this is a really interesting effect, and this house is not an actual 3D model in the world, because this one is inside of a viewport frame. So you can see that it's not anywhere inside of the workspace. And I can kind of just go into it like this. And you can also see that it covers the UI whenever it overlays it. But for these options, we have a house one mask that's going to cover the second house, because this one is put as a masking layer. So when it's off right now, this object that's in the viewport frame is going to be see-through, the same as for example going over these cubes right here. And then we have a house tool that can just enable or disable the viewport frame, and also a player mask, which is really interesting, because you can see that whenever I enable it, our character is going to be popped in front of here. And how this works, I believe, is that the player mask is made out of different viewport frames for each body part, and that's why it's able to be rendered in front of the viewport frame of this house. But there are small visual parts that you can see, for example going around this part of the hand right here. So that's what the player mask does, and there is also the baseplate mask, which I haven't noticed that it does anything except maybe give it like the same edge on the viewport frames. So that's the first example that should make you understand this, but now let's move to actually something a bit cooler, which is going to be the character example. And now I've seen something like this being created in different game engines, for example Unity, with like an overlay shader. And although this is not really intentional for Roblox Studio, you can see that the engine is actually capable of doing something like this. And this is also going to work, for example, if the character is behind something. So partially something like this is kind of like a highlight. And if I disable the house on mask, you can see that not only the character is going to be, well, like this, whenever our camera is going to overlay a part of the building, but also this building is going to be covering it. And there is also a plane distance from the head, which is just going to make it so the effect is only going to be visible on a part of our character, and that's because this part that's being rendered is actually just a plane. But if I put it to -5, you can see that our character is having this mask effect on them. And also it stopped updating the plane, but yeah, this is just making my head hurt. And it reminded me of how they made like these clothing masks on Chowder. I don't know if any of you guys watched it, but hey. Yeah, I need to move to a different example because this is giving me migraine. Now this is a portal example, and this one is actually really amazing, because if I step into here, suddenly I'm in the crossroads. But there is some weird stuff going on, so let me just step out of it. And also, talking about performance on this, I have Studio at 240 FPS, and right now it's running at 90 and 100. So you can see that this is kind of performance heavy because it's basically just rendering two games, two places at once. And this example in particular has these multiple masked spheres. I can also just do a camera transition like this if I wanted to, because it's pretty neat. But yeah. So now on this one you have a crossroads mask that is going to enable or disable the map, then the portal itself, and there it goes. Then again the player mask, and also the sky mask. That is going to disable the skybox inside of the portal. So it just seems like that's all there is to it, right? But you also have the background transparency. And by itself it doesn't really do anything, so you need to turn off the sky mask. And now I'm also going to disable the portal, so you can basically just see the effect. And now this one is pretty interesting. I also need to enable the player mask again. So normally I'm on a base plate, but because of the skybox being turned off on the viewport frame, it also looks like I am in this like kind of dimension with the crossroads. Like you can see an outline of the tree, but there is not an actual tree over here. Same with like basically every other part of this. And now if I change it to like 0.9, you can still see the outline of things, while also being able to render the skybox. So this makes me feel like I am inside of a ghost town. And I don't think you can get this effect with anything else. It's also really interesting seeing this from like the inside of the house, where it seems like it's giving a reflection on the walls. Roblox with RTX confirmed. And another portal example is this one, which isn't fully finished, so it's only going to work with half of the crossroads. Like this. And although my character seems like it's going inside of the map, he's actually just right here on the base plate. So this is a really nice visual effect. Sadly, I can't go up any of these because it just seems like it has no collision, and that's because it's inside of a viewport frame. But this is really amazing as having like a portal into a different dimension. And with this one, my studio is actually running at 220 FPS on average, but it's still kind of a massive dip. Now, speaking of RTX on Roblox, this is the reflection example, which again has the house, then the house mask, the player mask, but also a puddle mask as well. So you can either have a full reflection or these puddles. But sadly there is no reflection of our character, and this is an actual hacky way of making something like a mirror, where it's not really going to be a mirror but a viewport frame masking trick. And then you also have an image transparency that comes with the puddles. So it can either be full like this, or barely visible like right here. But I really wish Dev would make it so it's going to give a reflection of our character. So again, this is without the house, then the house mask, and the player mask. And now the puddle mask, which actually makes it really trippy right now. And I need to find the button again. Oh, that's the player. So here is the puddle. I'm just going to move to another example. And it's going to be this moving text. Now this should give you a bit more of an idea, because if I for example disable the mesh texture, you can see how this is actually being achieved. So if you didn't understand the example that I was talking about previously, now this should give you more of an idea. So you just have these spinning cubes right here, and these ones are inside of viewport frames, and then the test text meshes that are inside of a viewport frame as well. And you can see that the text is blue, but it has these cubes basically just overlaid on top of them. And there is also the surface appearance that was mentioned somewhere in here, and it was this paragraph which says that this example also shows how decals, textures and mesh textures don't inherit the masking ability of 0 alpha meshes, but surface appearances on the other hand do, and this is why they don't appear outside of the letters. So everything is basically just going to be explained in this info tab right here. But then there is a wavy text that has the waving text mask, which is this one, then the bubbles, so I can either have them on or off, and also the background. but I need to turn the bubbles on again. And it's giving this cool effect where the bubbles are actually creating the text. Then there is an image example that I need the toolbox for, so I'm just going to put this ID of a particle that doesn't really look correct. But let's see what this one is about. So it's saying that surface appearance support 5 levels of transparency. So you have the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and the fifth one. And the parts that are opaque, the opaque parts, which are the visible ones, are going to mask out the part of the image, while the transparent ones, which are all of these ones, basically just aren't, and they're gonna work as an overlay kind of. And then you have a paint example, which I can just draw on. So I can make like a happy face like this, or just like completely erase it. Or even do something like this. And now I have a happy face on my screen. Yay! But yeah, that's basically all of these examples. I highly recommend that you check out this place yourself. And also remember to check out the ByteBlox' video on this. And overall, I just wanted to mention that despite this being really cool, it shouldn't be used in games too much because it can take a lot of resources, as you can see, and it might be causing a lot of lag. And now for the last bit of explanation, I need to go into Blender first, to the shading tab to be exact. And I need to add a new material, and then something called a color attribute. That is going to display the alpha on the base color. Now back in the modeling tab, I'm just going to make this one a bit taller, then go to the material preview. And I should also enable this. So after I go into the material preview, I need to go to the vertex paint. And then change the mix of the brush to erase alpha, and I'll just go over the vertices. Now this is going to erase the alpha channel of our mesh, and now I just need to export this as I would anything else. So I'll just select this, go into File, Export and then FBX, then just set selected objects and hit on Export FBX. Then I already have this in my inventory, but what you can do is just select on Import 3D and just select the file. But I'm just going to insert this pillar and then decrease its size to around right here. So you can see that this is a normal pillar at first, but this type of the pillar is exactly what was being used with the viewport frames. And normally there isn't anything wrong with this one, but I'm going to present what happens whenever I change it to a material that has transparency on it. Like for example the glass material. And although this pillar is all white, you can see that the glass is basically just pitch black. And if I enable double-sided on it, and I'm going to move it a bit higher, you can see that it has some reflections and the material, but it doesn't have any transparency. And if I try to make this one transparent, it's just going to disappear, well, completely. Okay, and what about a different material like a force field? Well, the exact thing happens, except it's keeping the color. And now a really cool thing with this one is that if I go into it, I can see the outside world a bit, right, but everything is basically the same color. You can see any edges or any shadows, even if this pillar has cast shadows on. And if I change the transparency on this one is actually going to work. And touching on one of my previous videos about the glass trick, this is a glass material with 99 transparency and also a disabled highlight. So sadly it's not really going to work. But what is actually going to work is that if this part has a highlight in it, you are still going to be able to see a map of the glass reflecting from the sunlight. So if I disable the highlight, or actually delete it, it's going to be gone. But yeah, that's going to be basically everything for this video. So leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, but yeah, hope you guys had a nice day and see ya.